All right, hello everybody. My name is Chidi. My name is Chidi Osakwe. I'm a product owner at Toyota. I own their finance and insurance products. So if you ever go to buy a vehicle, you probably get offered a VSA, vehicle service agreement, or a GAP product contract. That is what I own. I also own a lot of their financing options. So I speak with a lot of the banks to get the new rates in and all of that good information. A little bit about myself. I also, in parallel in working at Toyota, I also was a founding member at a small startup here in the Dallas area called CareQuarter. We created peripheral devices, so keyboards, mouses, etc. The unique characteristic about those devices is they were programmable, which was the first programmable peripheral device on the market. We also were tapped to go onto Shark Tank. We fielded for that, but we did not actually air for that, sadly. And we also grew that from zero. Before I left, we grew it from $0 to $2 million a year in revenue, which was a huge milestone for a 5-person team. So a little bit about my background. I went to school for software engineering. I know Victor spoke about it a little bit, but I interned with Toyota, and through that internship landed me my full-time position that I have now. And yeah, so I guess I can start to talk a little bit about the startup world and then the corporate environment, where you have much more funding. Things are a lot slower, a lot of red tape to get things done, but I can talk about the differences between those two environments. So with the startup company, CareQuarter, that company was a 5-man company when we kind of first came together with the idea and began building the company. With that, I was the only software developer I was the only software developer to create any of the applications that would interface with the device. We had another developer who did a lot of the hardware programming, but that's a little separate than what I'm going to discuss here. With the software development for a startup company, it's much more streamlined. I hired 2 people as well, so we're a 3-man team by the time I left, including myself. With that, a few differences that I can point out definitively is the design process for a lot of the software on a startup versus a corporate, a lot of red tape side, is you're able to push things out. We did not employ an agile process. It was more get it done as fast as possible, because you want to get things out to the market so that the market can discern if it's a good product, if you need to stop developing on that product. When I look at the corporate side, a lot of things are very well thought through. I know you guys are probably very familiar with the agile process. With that agile process comes the 2-week sprint life cycle. In that life cycle, you then deploy whatever you have to production. But if we look at the software development process from a corporate standpoint, there's a lot of thought and research that goes into employing any amount of dollars to any project that you want to develop. So I'll take an example from a project that I'm currently working on at Toyota. It's called SmartPath. SmartPath for Toyota is a digital retailing platform. So you can buy, sell vehicles from any dealer, not only vehicles, but insurance products, et cetera, through the application. With that product, it took to where we are now. It took 7 years to get to where we are now, which is the main financing stage of the product. In that 7 years, took 7 years of research, a lot of conversations as a product owner, a lot of conversations with each dealership, understanding their pain points in their customer journey, understanding what they really look for in a product, and then understanding the products that they use currently. So with that comes the software development lifecycle. So after you take in all the information from the dealers, and the dealers are your stakeholders, after you take in all that information, you then kind of boil it down into what the dealers are looking for. So they'll tell you a lot of things. They may say that we're tired of bouncing from different platform to different platform. And that could be interpreted as maybe we should just build a brand new platform that can do everything all at once. But when you ask more questions, you deep dive a little bit more between the dealership and a few people that work on a dealership and work with those platforms, you can then come to an understanding of what the dealership is really looking for. And what they're really looking for is a platform that can integrate all of the platforms into one, so that you don't have to jump between different platforms to achieve the sale of a vehicle or sale of a product. So that's really the first stage of the process, interviewing the stakeholders, understanding their pain points, and then boiling it down to actionable items that can be developed and interpreted by the development team. So once you finish that planning stage, you then enter that development stage with with your developers, and that's usually a pretty long process depending on what you're trying to develop. And I'll give you an example. One of the features that we're trying to develop now is the big online financing portion. So you can finance a vehicle through any lender in America. To do that came a lot of compliance issues, a lot of red tape again. When you're looking at developing a product, not only do you have to face the red tape, the main issue when developing a product is not the development. Development is very straightforward, but it's the regulation around all the things that you want to develop to actually achieve your end goal. So when we started developing the product, we ran into a lot of issues in terms of requirements gathering, actual legal blockers that would prevent us from actually taking the next steps into developing the product, which are things that we went through the process, got all the requirements ready, and then you could come to your development team with a pretty rock solid plan on what you want to develop and what the end goal is for that development. So now when we take all the information, now we want to start deploying to production and start writing the code to actually begin the development of that product. That's when we step into the agile life cycle, where every 2 weeks you're developing the product, you're testing the product, you're building your test suite, and then you're deploying to production, whether it's in dark mode or you want to deploy it in active mode, where a dealer can actually interface with the product, tell you what the problems they're facing with the product are, and where you need to iterate on the product to make it more conducive for their work environment. So with that, I think we spoke about the ideation process. We spoke about the research that comes into play. I'll dive a little bit deeper into that development process and what it takes to develop a full solution that can suit all your dealers' needs or your stakeholders' needs. So when developing that product, again, the team that we work with, or I work with, is a 54-man team. So now, not only you have to have the stories or the kind of like the throughput so that they can actually work on the product, but you need to understand that your requirements need to be buttoned up in a way that those developers don't come back with multiple questions, multiple issues that they're facing, so that it blocks the sprint entirely. So you want to ensure that your sprint is very clean. You want to make sure that your stories are very clear and have very clear requirements and acceptance criteria, so that the developers know exactly what they're developing, what they need to deliver, and how, as a product owner, I'm going to look at what they've developed and accept it for completion. So, excuse me. So, I think we spoke about all the development pieces. Deploying to production is I think is a big piece that I should talk about here. And then after deploying, that validation from the stakeholders, understanding what you deployed and if it's actually what they're looking for. And this is kind of the great thing about the agile process, because it's continuous improvement. You're always getting feedback on what you deployed from the stakeholders, if it's exactly what they're looking for, and if it's not, you've been able to get that communicated and get those requirements, and you can iterate on that piece that you're developing. So when deploying to production, there's a few different phases from a corporate standpoint, and it's very different from a startup world where you're able to just push to production with minimal checks. I know at Toyota we have multiple steps, so you have to go through compliance, you have to go through QA, and then you have to go through InfoSec. So compliance will tell you if what you're deploying will break any of the legal regulation. InfoSec will tell you if you're storing the data correctly. I won't dive too deep in that, but if you're storing P2 information, which is it's essentially personal information, so social security numbers, it could be, yeah, just private information, yes sir. Oh, you work for InfoSec? Okay, so you know. So because you're storing that information, you need to make sure that information is secured in a way that does not, if there is a breach, or in a way that if there is a breach, it does not affect the customer in a way that all the information is leaked, essentially. So you have to go through InfoSec, and then you have to go through QA approval. So it's just a high-level step to ensure that this was tested, performance tested, and regression tested, to make sure that the performance of the product is still up to par, and what you're pushing will not cause any degradation in the performance of the product. So once you're done with that piece of the release process, you then go into the in my eyes, the continuous stage of the agile process, where you're speaking to the dealers, speaking to your stakeholders, and understanding if what you deploy to production is what they're looking for. You want to give them a lot of time to test what you've deployed to production to ensure that what you deployed is working and that they're kind of comfortable with what you're looking for before engaging with them again for any feedback. So with that, I can kind of take a step back and look at the startup landscape in case anyone here goes into a startup kind of environment. And
before you do that, let me pause real quick.
Yeah.
Is this music distracting for y'all? Yeah? Some people are saying they can't control it, but what we could do is the speakers are one there. We can move over to this side, there are no speakers over there, so it'll be a little bit quieter. So if y'all want to pick up the chairs,
sounds good.
you can slide over here. Chidi, would
Yep.
you like to use this whiteboard for anything you think?
No, not really.
Okay.
I don't think I have anything to write out. So what?
Technical architecture?
I mean, I don't have anything to architect. It depends on the system, if that makes sense.
I was even saying just like, going up, right? I was thinking like, I know you were just talking about like
Toyota Connected, so
Oh, you work at Toyota Connected?
so I did. So
You did?
Basically, I was with the team that worked on Infoset.
Oh, wow, brother. I didn't know that.
I was there for a little. I was there alone. It was cool. It was a cool situation.
Respect. Man, you want to,
sit right here, Chidi.
sorry, you want to, well, I'll talk to him. So you want to come up?
Oh, no, that's all you want.
Okay, I was waiting.
No, you coming up in a minute. Nah.
That's how he gets it.
Sir, this is first time. This is first time.
Yeah.
How long was it?
Yeah.
We gonna talk to the temple one part. You know my brother.
Yeah, cool.
All right, cool.
Last
It's better,
part
right?
was,
It's better, right?
yeah.
All right, so now you're going to talk about startup.
Yeah, I think I went through everything.
Come on up here.
Okay. Yeah, I think I spoke. I spoke through everything Toyota. Then we can talk about.
So let me ask you a few questions when it comes to Toyota
Yeah.
and deployment. So you're coming from the product perspective, right? So are you on a Scrum team that
Yeah.
you meet with daily?
Yep.
What's the most difficult part about your engagement with the
that's a
Scrum
great
team, right? Because
Yeah.
most of these people here, they're coming from the Scrum, the Agile perspective, working with developers, and a lot of times there is a disconnect between product and engineering. So what would you say from a product owner's perspective, what is the most difficult thing about engaging with Scrum teams, and what do you wish they would bring to the table that would make your job easier?
My situation is a little unique, so I can talk to it. So with my situation, our team is 54 developers, and we split out the
Wait,
teams to
54 developers
54 developers and QA.
on
So-
one team?
On one team. So we split them out into 4 teams. So we have 4 different teams. Each team has about around 12-ish people each. So it's a little unique because some developers have to jump from each meeting, essentially. So the whole morning is full of meetings. I would say the biggest pain point, especially when discussing with developers, is. So let me take a step back. So most of our developers are offshore, and there's a cultural difference, especially when working with developers that are based in maybe India versus in America. So what I found is that developers out of India tend to not voice a blocker or any pain points they face because they don't want to, and this is my interpretation, they don't want to seem maybe incompetent or they're scared to lose their contracts. So because of that, it makes it a little harder to communicate, but as a product owner, you need to be the one to lay the foundation and let them know that this is a safe space to talk. If you do have any problems, it's not an indication of your skill set, but it's really an indication of maybe I'm just a bad story writer. Maybe I didn't communicate the requirements properly so that you were able to take the story and run with it. So I think, honestly, that's the biggest blocker that I face as a product owner.
Gotcha. Anybody else have any questions for him? Okay. So you want to talk about a little bit about
Yeah.
your experience in the startup world?
Startup, yes. So the company is called CareCorder. Again, it's a peripheral device company, so typing apparatus, so keyboards, mouses, etc. And we call them smart keyboards or smart mouses, so you can program the mouse or program the keyboard to output For example, if I type TY, I can program the keyboard via the application that I wrote to output "thank you," for example. So it's a very cool product. So I guess I want to talk about fundraising in case anyone wants to get into the startup world, and then talk about the development process in a startup environment. So I guess firstly with fundraising for startups, especially if you have a very unique product that doesn't have any predecessors, is extremely hard, because for any venture capital company or any private equity company, it's hard for them to create a basis on the potential of the company. So there is no basis or baseline for them to kind of go from to evaluate your company. So they can really only evaluate your company on the revenue that you've generated. And I believe, I can't remember now, I left about a little over a year ago. I believe for software companies, the multiple for valuation is about 10x. So if your company in revenue does 2 million, the valuation of the company is evaluated at 20 million. Our company was a little unique because, again, it's a hardware product. Hardware products are usually evaluated, I think, half of that, so 5x. So if it did 2 million, it'd be worth 10 million. So it's usually worth 5x, and a little bit about that. So software companies usually have a profit margin for the product that they sell, about 70%. Hardware products are normally I think it was 30% or 20%, and that's why the valuations vary so starkly. But with our product, our profit margins were extremely high, a little over 50% profit margins on the product, so it was a very different company to evaluate. So again, a few things that you want to make sure that when you're going to pitch a product to a venture capital for any capital, you don't really want to get into the minutia of the product. You don't want to really get to what it does, how it does, because that's not really their game. They want to know how much money the product makes, what the market looks like for this product, how many people will be willing to purchase the product at its current price point, and then what margins can they get so they can exit the product as soon as possible. So those are the main things you want to hit on. You do want to give a high level understanding of what the product does, because you don't want them to be kind of lost as to what you do. But that's not exactly what they're looking for. They're trying to understand what your product does and how much they can make from investing in your product. Another thing that's a good thing to know is when pitching to these companies, you want to be extremely buttoned up on your numbers, because that's all they're really looking for. So you want to make sure that you understand what your projections are for the next year, what your growth looks like for the company, and how you're doing currently, and then what you're going to do with the money. So I would say those are the 4 things that you need to know if you want to start pitching or create a company that you want to start getting any funding for.
Let me ask you a question, Chidi. As it relates to like the development process before you get funding, like how did you guys go about developing the software and even the hardware with the engineering teams pre-funding? What did that development team look like?
Yes. So I have another friend that had a startup, but he sold it. With his product, he didn't have an actual product before because he was creating a CRM. So there's many CRMs on the market.
Customer retention
management.
Relationship
manager. Yeah. So he was creating a CRM. There's HubSpot. There's Salesforce. There's multiple CRMs out there. So there's a basis of understanding of what the market looks like for CRMs. So it was easy for him to go into the meetings because everyone understands the CRM, and he didn't have to have a fully fleshed out product. With Caracorder, because it's such a unique product, we had to come with something tangible that they can touch, they can understand that this isn't just a pipe dream because it's never been done before, so that we could invest in. So when we initially tried, when we were building out the keyboard, we tried to kind of garner some support. Other than friends and family that are very close to you, a private company or any external investor is not going to invest in a company that is a very unique product with nothing tangible to show for it. So the CEO, he created the idea. He had already started working on it, but it took about 2 years before we got something on the market that was competitive.
So who
in a
developed
sense.
that?
So it was a mix. It was Riley, who's the CEO, Matt, who worked on the hardware side, and me, who worked on the software side. So all 3 of us developed the hardware product. I mainly owned all of the UI pieces. So anything that interfaced with the product, anything that communicated with the device, anything that extracted any information from the device was my kind of lead. So yeah, you want to make sure if your product is very unique, you want to make sure you have something. It's always good to come with something, but if it's a very established field that you're entering that has multiple players, it's a little easier to sell. The thing that you really need to sell them on is your unique proposition. Like, what are you going to do uniquely that Salesforce doesn't do? Or what market or niche are you going to focus on that Salesforce currently doesn't focus on, and how can you capture that market? Those are the important things when you're trying to pitch to any private equity company or any investors, honestly.
Let me answer this question. So, as a startup of just the three of you guys in the beginning, if we've got someone that is interested in entering the business or working as a product owner or a scrum master or a delivery lead for a startup company, what advice would you give them to like engage with the company that's in that startup phase so that they can help you guys kind of put a framework behind the process that you guys are doing? Because you guys I don't know, were you guys using Scrum or Kanban that early? No. Could you guys have used someone to come in and give you some structure?
I think it depends on the stage the company's in.
Okay.
So an early stage startup, I think Agile would actually be a hindrance to the company because you're just trying to get things out to the market so that your market can test the product. But I think after you've matured,
you guys are being agile already.
In a sense, yes, in a sense, but not as structured as what the Agile process is.
Okay.
But I think, depending on the startup you're looking at, first to get in contact with them, most small companies or small startups don't have like job postings. Again, depending on the size, if it's like less than 50 people, usually not. But it's easier to reach out to somebody in leadership at the company to get a job. For example, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy that I hired, I don't know, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy I hired, he reached out to me through Discord. And we use Discord to triage a lot of issues that someone was facing with a device. He reached out to me through Discord and was like, hey, I'm a developer, I do X, Y, and Z. He sent his portfolio over. I was like, oh, cool, I'll hire you. First, before I hired him, we had him do like a test. So the test I gave him was to create a text-to-speech software. So you can type something in and it'll speak to you. And he just leveraged Google's, I think, text API or voice API and created it. And then we hired him on. So he proved that his skill set and he can think on his feet. And then we hired him on. So I think that's the best way for very small startups to get hired on. And then when we talk about employing different processes, for a startup that's very small, it's hard because that's not really your focus. You're trying to just push code out. You're trying to get things out as fast as possible so that the people that you're engaging with, because you tend to have a very small community that's very passionate about your product. So you don't want to wait long times before you give them something new to try. You want to make sure you get it out to keep them engaged with the product and keep the enthusiasm about the product alive. But once you get to, again, the friend I had, I think he was, I want to say like 70 employees. I think it was definitely over 25 for sure. But I think once you get to that stage, that's when you need a lot of structure because it's hard to manage 25 people by yourself or with 5 people, especially if they're all remote. So you want to make sure you put in these processes and kind of keep the guardrails up so that they're not doing things that are out of scope or just messing things up essentially. So yeah, I think at that point, that's when you want to come in and then employ those different strategies and processes to make things easier.
I was a bit, I think, when you talk about the agile process slowing down, and a lot of people think this, but I'm interested in how you perceive the agile process, especially in the one you're working with Toyota.
Yeah.
Because to say it slows you down.
Yes.
Because I understand why a lot of times it slows you down, because people feel it has to be in the 2-week motion.
Yeah.
And it has to have all this heavy stuff on top of it. And really, it's not a real framework within the agile process they're doing. They're doing more of a project management hybrid that then has an agile label on it.
Yes.
So now the agile process is slowing us down.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, if you were doing a real
agile process,
you'd be faster.
Yeah.
Right? So like if you were doing hyper scrum, you'd be working, especially when you think about developers who get distracted, right? Some really smart people get distracted very quickly.
Yeah.
If you were working in a high-performance model of like an hour and 45, 2 hours, with that focus factor going on, it would actually make
Be faster.
better and faster than what you're doing, versus going into the bureaucracy that comes in the so-called agile agile process.
Yes.
Right? It ain't really the
It's not agile.
process.
Yeah.
But it's got in the agile name.
Yeah.
So,
a
you know,
great
I
question.
just have to call that out.
I understand.
That messaging
Yeah.
goes across the world.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't do the agile process, do so. But when you look at it, you ain't doing no agile process.
Like we want to go faster. We want to get feedback from our customers.
Yeah.
Like,
We want
that's what we're talking
to be
about.
lean, but we don't want to do agile because it's going to slow us down. You're describing agile. You know that, right?
If
So there's a misconception.
I think it's
a huge misconception.
I think it depends.
Let me
Honestly.
say this because agile is framework agnostic, right?
Yeah,
may
you can
not
do
like
waterfall agile.
Scrum,
Yeah.
right? But you can still do agile without doing Scrum.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You may do Kanban. There are other frameworks within the Agile umbrella that you could do XP, right? There are different things that could work for you. I think that most people just know
The Scrum framework.
and
Okay.
the way, probably the poor way their organization has done Scrum and the way they've seen it. And so they just say, okay, all Agile is like this.
It's going to be too much process, too many meetings.
If
So, you know.
I agree if we're looking at like I think the 2-week Scrum process, I think is the perfect sweet spot to push out quality code. I think if you're trying to push out, you want to push out, it's hard to find a middle ground for like efficiency and quality. Like that middle ground, I think Scrum Agile provides with the 2-week sprints. But if you're trying to get things out to the market on a whim, like fix a bug now,
Right.
the Scrum Agile process doesn't lean to that because you have the set 2-week deployments.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So please don't tell anybody that.
What?
That's not true.
So you can-
That's
you can-
not
So the-
actually- no, that's not true. So please don't say that.
That's not true?
No. Organizations have decided
The 2 weeks, okay.
to use 2 weeks.
Okay.
But you could deploy it daily if you
You
want.
deploy daily. I see. Okay.
It's not wrong. It's right in the Agile, in the Scrum guide from 2000
Scrum guide.
or something.
From
The old Scrum guide says that.
So the new Scrum guide says you can deploy whenever.
You're supposed to go as soon as it's ready.
From 2020.
As fast as it's ready.
As soon as it's ready.
Always been that way.
I see.
Always
Okay.
been that way.
The product owner really has the freedom to decide when it gets deployed. Well, I mean,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
talking from just straight
From a
Scrum
agile perspective. Okay, okay.
The organization may have some different rules.
Okay,
We
I see what you're
deploy
saying.
once a month, right?
I see,
But
yeah.
that's not.
Okay.
That's not Agile is putting that in place. Right?
I see.
The job of the Scrum team is to get it ready. If the Scrum team gets it ready on
Ready
day 2
for
of the
release.
Scrum,
Okay.
and it's ready to go, and the product owner has that ownership and says, okay, we're going to push it now, you can deploy it
I see. I
as
see.
frequently as you want to.
So if you think about the
Okay.
Googles, you think about the people who are really driving, who are really doing
Drive it.
They're deploying every 15 minutes and every couple of seconds and expect that level with quality,
Continuous deployment.
Yeah.
right?
I see. I see.
So, but organizations have bureaucracy that they put in, right, to satisfy all the things they want to
get
measure
done before
and
deploying.
all the things they want as safety because they're not willing to be that risky, which is why startups take market share.
Yeah.
Right? That's why startups have what they do.
I see what you're saying.
And why people look for startup energy, right? Because we're going to get done, we're going to get it done. And we move faster. But the minute people start to put bureaucracy in place, unnecessary bureaucracy, right? And which is why even when startups get big and they start looking to hire leaders,
Yeah.
and they go to organizations to bring
That's
in
why things get
leaders,
slower.
What do they bring in with them?
Yeah, red tape.
Their way of doing stuff.
I
is
see.
bureaucracy.
Okay.
So it's not true.
Okay. So if the 2-week sprint is not true, then Agile would lend itself to more of a startup feel. If that's the case, that means the Agile environment, the startup environment I was in was Agile. With less bureaucracy. Okay, I understand then. I understand.
I would recommend 2.5 day sprints.
2.5 days, no way.
Absolutely, you can. You could do 1 hour, 45 minutes.
So you have
2.5 day sprints.
You have 20-minute planning, then you have 2.5 day sprint, and at the end your retrospective. What did work good? Have a review. Does it work out? What do we want to do in the upcoming 2.5 day sprint? So you have 2 sprints per week.
Which means the developer would get.
Too long. Go for
So,
1 day sprint.
so that means the developer would get one story every 2 days, or 1 or 2 stories depending on how you point the stories.
But see,
QA
that's where you're getting hung up too. Because see, Scrum doesn't tell you have to have a story. Scrum says there's something we've got a goal to do. What is
Okay.
the goal? And how do we get it done? So this is the goal we're working on, guys. How do you think we got it? Okay, we're gonna go do it. So it keeps that in front of the team. So it's that goal that drives the team, and having the product owner with the team saying, remember, this is where we're going to, these are the things that we're promised, and this is what's really going to drive revenue for us right now. So everybody swarms that and gets it out to the customer.
So the goal could be that text to
So
speech.
it's a very different model than most people are teaching and actually so clearly practicing.
And what you're describing is what business wants, because they can't self-funding without measurements.
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
So that's why you bring up story pointing, that's why you bring up metrics, why you bring up all those things, because business has to go to the board and say, based on these metrics and these charts and
Yeah.
these measurements, we need this amount of money. That's the fight that the business and the technical side have at all times.
Always.
Always.
But it's the
Because
yin and yang.
It's
yin and yang,
tough.
'cause we need
It's
one
tough.
another.
It's tough. It's just hard for me to see that in an environment, especially the one I work in.
Oh, well,
We have-
you won't see in that environment because that environment has a lot
Of bureaucracy.
layers of
Okay.
bureaucracy, a lot of layers, right? So they've been trying over years
To break it down.
pull those layers away. What all big organizations tend to do as a solution is they create an innovation lab. And the innovation labs get to be totally what we would call raw agile. So in those
Okay.
places, they're moving as fast as they can and they don't have to deal with the rest of the organization. They give them real production environments, so they have the ability to go straight to production. They have the best testing suites, so they have full automation from day one. Most organizations you go in are not fully automated. They have not invested in that, so they can't test that fast. They can't guarantee what they put to production is good, and they don't have the mechanism to pull it back out of production well enough. So if something breaks, you're talking about a whole bunch of stuff breaks. And then they could get sued, and then they could have leaks, and it becomes so costly to them. They've had to put in all this bureaucracy to save them when something goes wrong.
On top of backup experience and all those things that you go to as well for customers. So you're losing on all sides with that workflow.
Yes, but I think I don't know what the agile process as it is, where there's no systems in place to prevent things like that. I think it works for specific environments. I don't think it would work for example, my environment where our systems have over 20 integrations with other systems. They all need to be in line, and we have to all deploy the same day at the same time or within the deployment window before. If you don't do that, the other systems will be affected. The other systems will break. Data will not sync across the systems. I think for specific environments like my startup environment where I own the product outright. Whatever I push to production is what's in production. It's different than an agile environment where my team has 54 developers. The team on Team A side has over 100 developers together. I don't think that would work in my specific environment.
But I think where you're getting hung up on is that you're trying to separate agile within companies. Agile is what you make it.
Okay, and that's good. Okay, I can hear that.
We literally sat down with 3 of the founders of the guy this past week. And literally, the oldest gentleman, he said the problem with agile in today's society is that we've taken the agile manifesto and made it the end all.
For every team, I agree.
Actually, was the floor.
Yeah, I agree.
To
I agree.
build off of, right?
I agree.
So
Yeah.
when you go into your different environments, when you go into your different teams, when you go into your different companies, our job as agile, if you're on that side here, is to come in and say, okay, what's your goal? What do you need? How you want to get there? And then on top of that, the other side of that is to create an environment for your team where they feel safe, secure, comfortable, and ready to work, right? And so within all of that is you creating your own framework of how you want to do things. So you had actual agile activities in your startup.
Yeah.
You didn't know you had agile, right? As well as I'm at Lockheed Martin globally, and we're constantly doing agile type things within my team, right? And you think you have layers in Toyota? You ain't got layers to get to
That's
the US
government, yeah.
You got this senator and this general and this.
Yeah.
And, there's sometimes we don't release for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Because there's be layers, but that doesn't mean that we're still not working incrementally. And as scrummers, I'm still not creating an environment where my developers feel safe and secure to come to work and actually want to be there. So agile is not just about production and iteration and work. It's also about creating an environment where all levels feel comfortable to come together and work together as a team. That's why Scrum was built upon the idea of rugby. When you come together, you're linking arms, right? You're pushing toward that goal.
Because we're uncovering better ways of doing whatever we're doing it, and we're uncovering it by actually doing it, and then teaching other people how we've done it to see if when we go to teach it, do we still have to refine it, and is it really the right way? That's the heart of being agile.
That's
So
right.
we're not constantly uncovering, right? And meaning it's a constantly doing. If we're not constantly uncovering, we're not being agile.
Okay.
You haven't got it. You haven't even got to it. Because that's the heart of it. And then we figured to do that, we've got to make sure we have individuals interacting in a way that is much more than just the process of their tools. Right? And that's what we found most of the time. If you track to what the biggest problem is in most organizations is the interactions have got polluted and they've got wrong. And if we worked on that, as humans, we are still better than machines. If we have the ability to feel comfortable, safe, and that you respect me and I respect you, and I give you a voice and you give me my voice, there is nothing we can't do together.
I see. Yeah.
Period. Which is why the strategy of every world government across the planet over history has been to keep people segregated from each other, who they think when they come together can make
cause a
something
problem.
amazing happen. Keep the best brains apart, otherwise they take over rulership, right? And that's the same thing that you have happening in businesses. You have many empires building in organizations,
That's true.
which is why the interactions get polluted. Because I have my empire over here in this organization, you have your empire over there, and you really don't want us to be a system, right? So that's when we start talking about systems thinking, is the idea of bringing everybody back into one system, one holistic group of we are going together as one to achieve a goal. That's what's broken in most organizations, which is why we have all our bureaucracy to protect me from having to truly interact with you. That's what it is. That's what it comes down to, just that.
Consider better.
When you speak about, we have, for example, 20 different products which have to interact with each other, so we have to deliver on the same date. There was something in the year 2000 that just had to Google for the year, which was called the SOLID principles. I guess they were also in the XP, and from SOLID, which is an acronym, so the O stands for Open Closed Principle. From a software development point of view, say, we are able to build new functions
Without
with
affecting.
new methods being which are able to be used, but closed for changes. So we don't change an existing point within our software because this could break stuff. So to make them make the software so that every single team, every single product can deliver even into production without breaking something. And only when the last team delivered, it really creates value. But you try not to have the connection between those teams so they are dependent
On each other, yeah.
But it can still deliver, one team delivers every 3 days, one team delivers 3 times per day, and the third team only delivers every 2 weeks. But some of the value can already be used even if the last team is not delivering.
Yes, I think
So interdependent.
I agree. Again, Toyota's a little different because on the financial side, similar to the government, it's very regulated. So you can't, for example, Toyota Financial, we have our own financing, but there's hundreds of other lenders with their own financing data. So we can't house any of that data, so that comes with the external integrations that we have. But along with that, rates refresh every 30 days. We can't show rates, and that's why the systems have to go off, because we can't show rates that are out of date and risk the chance of a customer rating a vehicle on a rate that does not exist anymore, because then you can get sued. So that's where the interlocking ecosystem comes into play.
And that's cool. Because they work for Toyota.
That's for Toyota, and that's understandable. Yeah, that's understandable. So the startup environment was a little different, where you could do certain things. Toyota's a little different because it's Toyota, but.
But there's the key thing when we look at all this, there's no cookie cutter. And you should never, as a Scrum Master, take a cookie cutter approach. Don't do it. Right? Don't ever do that. You're always going to go in and pulse the environment to understand what key things can I always bring in. So you've got key things you can bring into every organization, like always. maybe you use your couch for a nap, so you don't want the light from the window coming in your face. So it's really important when you first go in to take a pulse of what is the behavior, how do people work here. Even if the working is toxic, even if you don't have a toxic environment, observe how toxic it is. Observe where the toxicity is coming from. So then you have your strategy approach, how to begin to remove that from the environment and shift it. Right? So don't do what you did at another company someplace else. Well, we've always done this. Don't ever.
But I think we went through startup a little bit. We spoke about the development process for the startup. Spoke about Toyota, their process, ad nauseum. So I think we're good. Maybe I'll say something. Your turn.
Use the word experiment. Experiment does not say permanent. It's an experiment. It's just experiment, see how it feels. Right? And if we can experiment on our bodies, and medicine does it every day. Okay, hopefully proof that we can experiment. Okay? So then why can't we experiment? Nobody's going to die.
Nope. Right? Not life or death. Just software.
Okay? Let's experiment. So take an experimental attitude and lightness. Always bring humor with everything that you say. Even if you're not funny, have a really good smile.
Facts.
Right? Because it will make everybody just go,
I'm gonna cut you off. I gotta give an example. Where I am now with DOD, I've never worked with DOD in my entire profession.
Department of Defense.
Exactly.
Y'all need acronyms behind it.
And so I'm working with the government on weapons that could pretty much start things and do some things, right? And so I'm sitting there in this meeting, and I mean they got the alphabet soup of acronyms going every meeting. Yeah. And guess what? I know literally 0.5% of what they talk about in these meetings. And so I just sit there. And like this the whole time. And guess what? And she said it. She said, always have a smile. Always bring joy, always bring laughter. Can I tell you, I'm still learning this job in a year and a half. I'm still learning factory. But I have more connections in that whole factory than anybody on my team. Because I go around and I speak and I laugh and I crack jokes and I bring in humor. That's my wheelhouse, is the humanistic side of Agile, right? Like she said, the people are processing. Because the truth about it is, burnout for most developers is not because of the work, because they love their work. The burnout is because they're doing this work and they feel like nobody appreciates them in the end.
That's true.
And so I sit and I work these 80 hours, and if we get to the end of the week and we're ready to deliver, and they're like, oh, that's not good enough, do it again. With no empathy, with no sympathy. So you don't know that my kid was sick. Oh, so you don't know my mom had died. Oh, so you don't know that I'm sleeping in somebody's house. Oh, so you don't know da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, you don't know how I was raised. Oh, you don't know that I grew up in a house where I was told I was nothing, so negative feedback does me. So when you go on your teams, you got to figure out who learns what and where, right? That's why most teams do those personality testing. I don't believe those. They're whack, right? Because the truth about it is, a one-on-one conversation with a person, just find out who they are, will tell you more about some little test, anything. And so my first thing I do one-on-one conversations. Who are you? Where are you from? What's your favorite birthday meal? What's your dad like? And then I have to have like a list of just stupid questions. If you begin to color, what's your color? Like just dumb stuff. But a lot of times what that tells you is how they think, what their temperaments are, and how to approach them, right? And guess what? What ends up happening is the more joy you show, they begin to exhibit the joy that you have because they try to catch it with you. Because they're trying to figure out why is he so happy in this dull place? How can he be overjoyed in this place where we all stressed out, right? So doing that is the biggest thing to do over any process, over any workflow, over anything you set up. It's just being empathetic and realizing that they are people at the end of the day and they got problems. I got deals all the time like, I have a rough day, go home. Well, he didn't say, go home, I'll talk to you. My kid having this title. Go to your kid's side. Right? Because guess what? This is how I tell them, you know the market right now, everybody needs a job. Don't sacrifice your job. Hell no. I got a family. If my daughter gets in trouble, I'm going to my child. This be the mom. Right? So the humanistic side of it is probably the most important thing with the Agile, because what it does is you create a connection, and guess what? At the end of the day, then when we have a real issue, and you have a real spike, when things about to shut down, they'll run through this wall for you.
That's
You
facts.
know you care for them. Now
That's
you can put
facts.
that in business, you can put that in relationships, you can put that in family. It's across the board, and that's the cool thing about Agile, because it's global and it goes across every cultural and racial barrier. There's no limit to what you do with it. So be creative. Like you said, experiment. Don't limit yourself, man. There's that approach I did. I probably worked about 7 companies, and every approach in every company has been different. Right? But at the end of the day, I form relationships that I have a life. So, have it go. Love y'all. So be good.
See you later, man. All right. Cool.
Thank you. Till
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you.